What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, June 3rd edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 12-game MLB slate tonight, so tons of different spots to talk about. Going to go through every game by game, talking about all of the pitching, hitting, ownership, the way it looks right now, all of that. We'll take a look at how my lineups would look if the slate started right now as well. Obviously, take that with a grain of salt. They're absolutely going to change between now and lock, but can use that as another talking point as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up so you get on the show, and turn on notifications so you get alerts when shows go live. Taking a quick look at the weather for tonight. Doesn't look like anything too concerning. Tampa Bay looks like the most concerning spot, so we will have to keep an eye on that. That is a 7:35 game, so hopefully we get an update decently before lock. Other than that, everything looks okay right now, but as always, keep an eye on that. As the weather gets warmer, you start to get more unexpected weather issues as well. So be sure to keep an eye on that. But for right now, I would assume every game is going. Tampa Bay does look like the most concerning. Other than that, I think we can just dive into it, starting with the Guardians taking on the Yankees in New York. Carlos Rodon is on the mound for the Yankees. Tanner Bybee going for the Guardians. Not much ownership coming into Bybee. 7% projected ownership there. $7,300 price tag. He's a good pitcher, but the Yankees obviously are one of the most dangerous matchups that you can get. So far this season, Bybee has struck out only 19% of hitters. That is down from last year considerably. So that's something to keep in mind as well. That has driven down his cost to 7,300, down from a 26% strikeout percentage last year. His stuff plus grade is similar to last year. Pitching plus grade is identical to last year. Fastball velo is the same. So I don't really know what the issue is for Bybee, but he has thrown 63 innings this year. It is at that point concerning that he is only striking out 19% of hitters. That being said, this matchup with the Yankees, obviously not one that you would be really interested in targeting anyway on a 12-game slate. But obviously, if this were Tanner Bybee of last season, where he's striking out a quarter of the hitters that he faces, you would be at least a little bit more interested in rolling the dice on him at a cheap price tag. But as is here, he's showing up about 3% of the time for me, about 7% for the field. The priority is on the other side. Carlos Rodon, as you can see on the screen, the highest projected pitcher in our projections at Run the Sims right now. Forgot to mention it at the top, but that is what you are looking at on the screen. They are publicly available as well. If you would like to use them, the link is in the description below. 2 subscription options there. You can get the fully detailed projections you see on the screen, downloadable, plug them into whatever optimizer, sim tool, whatever you want. Or if you're somebody that plays less volume and that price point doesn't make sense, you can get them overlaid onto the DraftKings lineup page for just $10 a month. So link is in the description below for those. But as you can see, we do right now at least have Rodon as the highest projected pitcher on the slate. Strikeout stuff has been very good so far this season. Highest strikeout percentage on the slate so far at 31.7%. Stuff plus grade and pitching plus grade are both down from last season, but they're still above average overall. And you're talking about 72 innings pitched for Rodon this year. At that point, strikeout percentage stabilizes relatively quickly. You should care mostly about, is he getting strikeouts or is he not getting strikeouts at that point, more so than exactly how does his stuff grade out. Stuff plus and pitching plus are metrics that I like to look at because they do give you information, but just using strikeout percentage once you get to this point in the season for most of these guys is going to be the better way to go. And for Rodon, like I said, striking out 31% of hitters this season. Not an easy strikeout matchup against the Guardians, but Rodon getting 27% ownership, showing up in nearly 50% of my lineups right now at 10,300. Offensively, starting on the Cleveland side, nothing really showing up as a priority here. The only hitter that's showing up as double-digit exposure for me right now is Jose Ramirez. That's to be expected. He's always a solid enough play, really regardless of who he's facing. But you have 24 pitchers going today. You can find plenty of better spots to target than Carlos Rodon. The 2 selling points, I guess, on Cleveland, if you had to make an argument for them, would be 1, Carlos Rodon is going to be popular, so you get negative correlation. And then 2, they are in Yankee Stadium. And so that is a park that, I talk about it a lot on these shows. If you think in terms of, not necessarily what is going to happen the most often, but when, not what offense is going to do the best the most often, but when they do well, what does it look like in terms of winning you tournaments. Any team in Yankee Stadium has some element of that. Well, if it goes well, it's probably going to go really well because it's a good place to hit home runs. You're unlikely, if any team in Yankee Stadium scores 10 runs in a game, it's unlikely that it was a bunch of singles and doubles. It's more likely that they were hitting some bombs. But again, still 12-game slate. You can kind of make the case for any team on a slate like, well, yeah, they could do well. But beyond that, it's tough to want to get to Cleveland. Like I said, Ramirez showing up 11% of the time for me, Fields at 5%. Other than that, everybody's projected for about 2% ownership or less. I'm getting to 2% or less. And since it is a 12-game slate, I am going to try and speed things up a little bit when I'm on teams that just don't look particularly good. Moving over to the other side, not really getting to the Yankees either. That is a team that I would like to get to. Like, it's the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. I don't think you need to elaborate too much on why I would like to get there. But same thing, 24 offenses on the slate. You're going to find plenty of worse pitchers to target than Tanner Bybee. That being said, there's never going to be anything wrong with stacking a low-owned Yankees team on pretty much any slate, regardless of matchup, given the upside that they have. And the highest owned hitter on this team right now is Aaron Judge at just 8% ownership. Everybody else projected for 5% or less. They should have Jazz Chisholm back today, which makes that lineup deeper and better, although he is relatively expensive as well at 5K. But Judge is showing up in 3% of my lineups. That's the highest owned Yankee bat I have right now. Bybee has had some issues with expected power this year as well, in addition to not getting strikeouts. 203 expected ISO allowed to lefties, 175 to righties. Ben Rice, 4,900. Jazz Chisholm, 5K. Grisham, 4,500. All some power bats from the left side there. But like I said, I'm having trouble getting to them. Bellinger from the left side as well. There are certainly there's no shortage of high upside bats you can get to from the Yankees here if you are so inclined. They just aren't a team that is really showing up for me much right now. Also, regarding the lefties, the Guardians do have two left-handed relievers in their bullpen, so and they didn't play yesterday, so they should have two arms that they can throw out there at these left-handed bats later on in the game once they get into the bullpen. But overall, I think it's an okay spot for the Yankees. Bybee in the past has been very good. This year he hasn't. They're in Yankee Stadium. They have really good hitters, but they are also relatively expensive. And again, there's just a million offenses on this slate. Philadelphia taking on the Blue Jays in Toronto. Christopher Sanchez going for the Phillies. Bowden Francis going for the Jays. Not a ton of interest in either pitcher here. Francis coming in at 5,700. You can always make the case that that's too cheap for a starting pitcher, but it's not an ideal matchup here against Philadelphia. Solid offensive team. They have, so far this season, they rank 26th in strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching. They only rank 19th in WRC+, but it's also a team that, has plenty of name value, talent on their lineup. Stott, Turner, Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos, Real Muto. Like, this is not a lineup that you expect to really just be a cakewalk for anybody. I'm not getting to Francis. Fields at about 3%. And then on the other side, Sanchez getting about 6% ownership. I'm not getting to him either. He does have improved stuff this year. 27.5% strikeout percentage this year compared to 20% last year. Stuff plus is up 6 points. Pitching plus is down slightly, but still well above average at 109. Fastball velo is up a mile per hour. He has one of the best changeups in baseball, which he can use to mitigate right-handed hitters, which you're going to get a lot of from Toronto. Righties this year have struck out 27.8% of the time against Sanchez, 320 expected WOBA, 155 expected ISO. But the problem here is that Toronto is just a really difficult team to strike out really throughout their lineup. Since the start of last season against left-handed pitching, the Jays active roster ranks 24th in strikeout percentage. They don't strike out against righties either. And Sanchez is 9,500. So it's more so the price point and matchup for Sanchez than the talent that is keeping me from getting him into lineups. Looking at the bats here, Philadelphia, pretty solid spot against Bowden Francis. Certainly don't have any issues with getting to them. One thing to keep in mind is that with it being a 12-game slate, ownership is just going to be relatively flat across the board, most likely as well. So the highest owned hitters on Philadelphia right now, Bryson Stott, Bryce Harper, and Kyle Schwarber are projected for like 6 to 7% ownership. And that's just what you're going to see. You saw 8% to Judge. You're just going to see that a lot going through this slate, where on slates of this size, you kind of, for the most part, can just kind of play whatever you want, because ownership's going to flatten out. People have so many options. Schwarber showing up 13% of the time for me. Harper at 9%. So around 1.5 to 2x the field on those guys. I'm a bit over the field on Real Muto, Kepler, Castellanos, and then a little bit under on Stott and Turner. But mostly, I think the Phillies just look like a solid stack here. They're not somebody that I'm jamming in crazy amounts. You're probably not going to see too much of that on a slate of this size. But Francis this year has allowed a 264 expected ISO to lefties with only an 18.5% strikeout percentage. He has been better, as you would expect, against righties, 21% K percentage, only a 142 expected ISO. But lefties have really done a lot of damage. Looks really good for Schwarber and Harper in particular. So far this season against right-handed pitching, Harper 194 expected ISO, Schwarber 294. Obviously, those are going to be the guys that you want to look to first. But also, you can get to some Max Kepler. He's only 3,400. He has a 198 expected ISO against right-handed pitching so far this season. Real Muto from the right side, 188, which is solid for a catcher. Bryson Stott gives you some stolen base upside in addition to a respectable 158 expected ISO. So it is a good spot here for Philadelphia. You can see the massive home run projection here on Schwarber, very high on Harper as well. If we click off this game, I'm going to go ahead and guess that, second most. Schwarber's tied with Judge for the second highest home run projection on the entire slate, only trailing Shohei Ohtani. So it really speaks to how good this spot looks for the left-handed power here, Kyle Schwarber in particular, but also Harper, and you can see a pretty high home run projection here on Kepler as well. On the Toronto side, going up against Sanchez, not super interested in getting to the Jays. This is just one of those spots where Sanchez is not super appealing because he's expensive and it's not a good strikeout matchup, but he's still a good pitcher. He's not somebody that I want to actively target that aggressively on a slate of this size. I'm getting basically like 2 to 5% ownership of the relevant bats on Toronto. Guerrero, Bichette, Kirk, Clement, Springer, Barger. They're all getting sub 5% ownership. So nothing that really stands out to me from the Toronto side. I mentioned it when I was talking about Sanchez, but pretty average-ish numbers against righties this year in terms of production allowed, above average strikeout rate at nearly 28%. If you go to the Blue Jays, I think it's as simple as just grab either the best value or the best hitters on the team, whatever you need in that particular lineup. But it's not a team that jumps off the page. It's something that I'm going to be aggressively targeting on a 12-gamer. Cincinnati taking on Milwaukee in Cincinnati. Great park for offense here in Great American. Hunter Green going for the Reds. Freddie Peralta for Milwaukee. So that does limit the appeal of going to bats in this game, given that you have two very good pitchers on the mound. Peralta coming in at 9K, getting 8% ownership. Green coming in at 9,500, getting 17% ownership. I'm not getting to any Peralta here, which is a little bit surprising because I do think he's a good pitcher, and it's not a terrible matchup here against the Reds either. So far this season, 24.3% strikeout percentage for Peralta, down from 27.5% last year, but still solid. And he's not super expensive at 9K. So I really wouldn't mind if I got to more of him by lock. The Reds active roster ranks 22nd in WRC plus so far this season against right-handed pitching. They are 7th in strikeout percentage. The park is not good for pitching, but other than that, it's a solid enough spot for Peralta. So I don't really have anything super negative to say about him. He does have pretty drastic splits in terms of strikeouts. So far this season, 27.5% K percentage to righties, only 21.5% to lefties. The Reds' projected lineup is pretty balanced, probably going to be 5 lefties, 4 righties, probably like 3 lefties in the top 5, 4 in the top 6. So skewed a little bit toward lefties, but nothing too crazy, most likely. So I think Peralta as a secondary play is fine, even though I'm not getting there. I am 2x the field on Hunter Green, though. Not a good strikeout matchup. Milwaukee is a tough team to strike out. They rank 21st in K percentage against right-handed pitching this year, but they also rank 24th in WRC plus. And Hunter Green is one of the most talented pitchers in baseball. Some of the absolute best stuff. 30.8% K percentage this year is up from 27.7% last year. So that's about a 3-point bump there. 125.8 stuff plus grade is far and away the best on this slate. That's up 12.5 points from an already elite 113 last year. Pitching plus grade has jumped 12 points from last year as well, from 108.5 to 120.8. Just unbelievably good stuff from Hunter Green. His fastball velo is up 1.7 miles per hour this year as well. He already threw 97.5 miles an hour. He's now averaging 99.3 miles an hour on his fastball this season. Hunter Green is an elite level pitcher, and he's only $9,500. So that price tag, combined with his stuff, with his strikeout ability, really helps to mitigate a lot of the downside of the Brewers being a relatively tough team to strike out. Green is a really, really good pitcher, and at only 17% ownership, I'm getting close to 2x the field there. Offensively, I'm not really prioritizing anything in this game. Both of these pitchers are very, very good. There is certainly upside in this game, a combination of park and then, also power and stolen base upside. But from the Milwaukee side, my highest owned bats right now would be Contreras at 9%, Turang at 8%, getting to some Durbin at 3K, and then Yelich at 6%. The outside of Durbin, Contreras, Turang, Yelich, Churio showing up 5%. Like, those are going to be the highest upside bats in the lineup, the best combination of power and or speed. Green so far this season has allowed a 240 expected ISO to lefties, only 477 pitches thrown, does have a 33% K percentage as well, but 217 actual ISO, 240 expected. Has struggled a little bit in that split. If you go back to last year, it is only a 153 expected ISO. So more likely than not, as we get a larger sample, that expected power number does come down. But, if you wanted to target him with Turang or Yelich, I think that would be fine. Turang obviously runs quite a bit as well. Righties this year only have a 235 expected WOBA against him, 112 expected ISO, 28% strikeout percentage. Contreras is always going to be one of your highest upside catching options, but there's nothing about the matchup that looks good for him. On the Cincinnati side, similar exposures for me as I had to Milwaukee. The field is getting 5% or less of the entire team, 5% coming into De La Cruz as the highest owned guy there, as you would expect. Stevenson getting about 4%. Everybody else projected at 3% or less. De La Cruz and Benson are showing up 8% of the time for me. They are my highest owned Cincinnati bats right now. Espinal as a value play at 3,400, showing up 6%, and then it's 5% or less across the board. So out of 150 lineups, looks like I'm probably just stacking Cincinnati a little bit here and there, but not prioritizing anything. So far this season, 145 expected ISO to lefties for Peralta, 166 to righties. Both of those numbers are perfectly fine. If you go back to last year, pretty similar, 157 to righties, 150 to lefties. So for both of these teams, I don't think that there is much that stands out from a matchup standpoint. You could argue, again, the left-handed power that Green's given up so far this year, but it's more likely than not that comes back down in line with what he did last year. So like that would, again, point you toward like Yelich and maybe Turang. But really, I think if you're going to either of these offenses, it's mostly just about the park and hoping that the opposing pitcher just doesn't have it that day, in which case you would just want like full stacks. I don't think there's a lot here that I would want to be using as like one-offs. Like De La Cruz, because of his raw ceiling, I think would be fine. But for the most part, it's kind of a situation where like if Peralta's on or Green is on and have their normal stuff, you don't really want any parts of it. And then if they're off, you would just want all of it, because then you just have a pitcher having a bad game against as many hitters as you can get. So these both do look like teams where, like, in a perfect world, logically, I probably would just kind of like have them isolated, where I either have a bunch of them, like mini stacks, full stacks, or probably nothing, with like maybe the exception of De La Cruz. Angels taking on the Red Sox in Fenway after putting up a really big game yesterday. Today we have Yusei Kikuchi and Brian Bayo on the mound. Kikuchi is still causing me problems showing up in my lineups, which I would really like to stop happening, but that probably won't happen as long as DraftKings is dropping his salary aggressively, which he has fully earned. But this is one where I wouldn't be surprised if our projection ends up coming down a little bit between now and lock. Just seems a little high on Kikuchi, given what we've seen this year. Obviously, last year, very good strikeout pitcher, but I know that our projections do factor in, what's currently happening. And so I am a little surprised to see it as high as it is in Fenway against the Red Sox, a team with like a 5 implied run total. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But for right now, projected for 10% ownership, he's in like half my lineups. Again, I think this changes in some way, shape, or form for me between now and lock. Projection maybe comes down a little bit, ownership comes up. But from a value standpoint, like I think the takeaway here right now, 5 hours before lock, is from a value standpoint, there is certainly upside for Kikuchi. There are strikeouts to be had in the Red Sox lineup. Their active roster since the start of last season has the highest strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching. They do platoon, so that is a somewhat misleading stat. Like, you probably have lefties that strike out at ridiculously high rates that are irrelevant because they won't be facing Kikuchi. But It's not like it's the best lineup in the world. Duran and Devers from the left side. Ref Snyder's fine. You have Carlos Narvaez probably batting cleanup. You have Romy Gonzalez, Abraham Toro. Trevor Story's been garbage this year. So it's not the best lineup by any means, but it is still Fenway Park. It is still a team with around a 5 total. And the biggest concern here, much more than the Red Sox, is Yusei Kikuchi just mailing it in after he got the bag in LA. 20.5% strikeout percentage so far this year is down between 7 and 8 points from last year. Stuff plus grade is down 9.5 points to 94. Pitching plus grade is still above average at 103.5, but it's still down nearly 7 points from last year. So you probably do see him right the ship at least a little bit. But this is also somebody that for most of his career was a really volatile pitcher that could get some strikeouts, but also give up a lot of power. And then he just put everything together last year in his contract, in his walk year, and was lights out, did a good job limiting power, got a ton of strikeouts. And then now he's in Anaheim where, players go to die after they sign big contracts. And he's, just following the Anthony Rendon blueprint, except for he's healthy and sucking. So very, very concerning, scary spot, but it is also a $6,700 salary on Kikuchi. So very boomer bust spot there, I think. Bayo on the other side coming in at 6,300. He looks like a good value as well, showing up 11% of the time for me. Fields at 14%. This is another pitcher that certainly has his flaws, but he does at least have some semblance of ability. He hasn't shown it really this year, only striking out 16% of hitters. His pitching plus grade is down 13.9 points from last year. He was well above average in that metric last year at 106.5. This year, he's down to 92.5. Stuff plus grade has dropped 7 points from 97.5 to 90.4. He has not been good through 40 innings pitched this year, but this is somebody that when he's on gets a lot of ground balls. We just haven't seen it, so far this season. You're getting an Angels team that does strike out a lot. They do have Mike Trout back now, so that obviously makes this lineup better and deeper. You may or may not have Moncada in the lineup today. If he is out and replaced by Scott Kingery, that is certainly a plus for Brian Bayo. But for both of these pitchers, I think it's just a case of they could absolutely get blown up in this park. And I haven't looked yet to see what I'm getting to offensively, but I would hope that I'm getting both sides of it. But at the same time, they are cheap and they do both have strikeout upside given the matchups, even though neither pitcher this year has done a good job of getting strikeouts on their own. They do both have good strikeout matchups in general. They are really cheap. So from a value standpoint, I think they make some sense, even though they are very, very far from being safe options. Offensively for the Angels, Field's not getting too much, 5% or less projected ownership to the entire team. I am a little bit higher than the Field, not getting a ton. Was kind of actually hoping that I would be getting more, but Rengifo showing up 13% of the time for me, second base, third base eligible at just 2,600. So that's showing up as a just useful value play. Joe Adell is 3,100 with plenty of power upside here in Fenway. Neto showing up 6% along with Trout and Soler and Ward. So I'm pretty much 5 to 6% on most of these guys, other than getting a little bit more of Rengifo and Adell. And those could drop off a little bit by lock too, just because a lot of times what you'll see happen, especially on a slate of this size, is that in the morning, when you don't have confirmed lineups yet, you're assuming that every lineup that comes out is the basically A+ lineup for a team. But then lineups come out and inevitably teams are resting guys are banged up, whatever it may be. You get some cheap guy in the lineup that you weren't expecting. So a lot of times you will see the $2,600 Rengifo that at 1:30 in the afternoon looks like a really useful value play. By lock, there's 3 values that look better or something like that. But I do think it's a solid enough spot for the Angels. Certainly plenty of upside here. JB Yankee said Bayo and Kikuchi together. I don't think you're going to need that. I don't know where you would be spending your money at that point. Neither of them project as top scorers on the slate or anything. I think we have enough good pitching on this slate that I probably wouldn't go that route too often. There is obviously a little bit of negative correlation there as well, since they can't both get a win, which isn't the end of the world, but it's not ideal. But yeah, so I guess to answer the question, sure, if for some reason you need that, but I wouldn't expect to be getting it very much, because I think in most lineups, I'm going to be able to find the bats to fill out lineups where I can get one of Kikuchi or one of Bayo and then get to Green or Rodon or Strider or whoever you want to pay up for. Of the 150 lineups that I built before the show, None of them have Kikuchi plus Bayo. It's a lot of Kikuchi Rodon, Kikuchi Green, Kikuchi Kirby, Kikuchi Lopez, and then small amounts of Kikuchi Smith, Bybee, a couple with, or one with Sagano, one with Malley. So yeah, it's not something that I think you're going to need to do on this slate. For the Red Sox bats going up against Kikuchi, I'm not getting to them, and I really would like to. This is something also that, I had said, I think it's pretty likely I don't end up actually having 50% Kikuchi at lock. Obviously, the less Kikuchi I have, the more likely I am to be getting to Red Sox bats as well. So that's something that could certainly change. So far this season, right-handed hitters against Kikuchi have a 168 expected ISO, 206 expected ISO, 19.4% strikeout percentage. Lefties haven't done anything against him. Sub 100 expected ISO, 25.5% K percentage, 265 expected WOBA. Limited sample there, but he has been legitimately good against lefties in that small sample. Righties have been the problem. You're probably going to get a lot of them for the Red Sox. One negative to stacking Boston, same thing we talked about yesterday, is they do platoon pretty heavily, so you do get some pinch hit risk. For example, if Ref Snyder starts in right field and Abreu's on the bench, then you have Abreu most likely pinch hitting later. Once a right-handed reliever comes in, you have some potential pinch hit risk elsewhere in the lineup too. But they are banged up. Like, you don't have Tristan Casas. He's out for the year. So that is one left-handed bat that they can't platoon anymore. They don't have first baseman, so that makes Romy Gonzalez, a little bit safer. And obviously, the lefties on Boston are their best hitters, Duran, Devers, Abreu, when he's in the lineup. So facing the lefty is less than ideal, but they are still in Fenway Park. They are facing a lefty that's been absolute dog shit this year and will probably have some ownership. So I do think that the Red Sox, in my head, I like the Red Sox more than I'm getting to them right now. The highest owned guys here, Duran's getting 8%, Devers getting 8%, Gonzalez getting 6%, Narvaez and Ref Snyder getting 5%. So again, 5 to 10% ownership on most of these guys, which is what you're going to see for most, solid offenses on this slate. And I am a little below that right now, I'm below that right now, but wouldn't be upset if that changes. And again, this is purely one of those, there's 24 offenses today. There's going to be plenty of spots that I like, but I don't really get to. The Red Sox right now, and to some extent, the Angels looking like one of those. Diamondbacks taking on Atlanta in Atlanta. Spencer Strider pitching for the Braves, Zach Gallen for the Diamondbacks, in a matchup between two pitchers who are really, really good and haven't really shown it so far. Strider so far this season striking out 25% of hitters through 14 innings pitched. Stuff plus grade only 98. Pitching plus grade 86.2. I assume you see better stuff from Strider going forward, but it could be a little bit. Keep in mind, he missed all of last season, or almost all of last season. I don't remember which one it was, coming back from Tommy John surgery. So you could see a little bit of time before Strider is back to being the elite level pitcher that he was. He's 8,500, so you are getting a salary discount on him, but he does also have a tough matchup here against Arizona. This Diamondbacks active roster against right-handed pitching this season ranks, and they've fallen off quickly. Where are they? Oh, never mind. They're still in third, so they haven't fallen off. I take that back. I didn't see them at the top and thought they had just plummeted. The Diamondbacks are third in WRC plus against right-handed pitching this season. They rank 22nd in strikeout percentage. It's not an easy matchup here for Strider, who, like I said, hasn't shown his best stuff through his first few starts here. He's getting 26% ownership because of the name value, because of what he's done in the past, because of the decreased salary, and I think all of that is fine. Anybody that tells you Strider absolutely doesn't have upside or isn't going to have a good game today is just making shit up. My issue though is that the ownership is there at 26% with these issues. Our projection on him right now is a little bit lower than, or not even a little bit. Our projection right now is lower than I've seen other places in the industry. As a result, I'm not getting to him right now. I'm just playing more Rodon. I'm playing more Hunter Green, and I'm fine with that. Does it feel great to not have Spencer Strider at 8,500? No, but it's a brutal matchup. The ownership is there. He's projected for similar ownership to different price points, but to Rodon, more ownership than Green. I can just find the salary easy enough to get to those guys that I do think are better. So I'm going that route right now. Maybe that changes a little between now and lock. Maybe we get a weaker Arizona lineup than is being projected. That's certainly possible. Zach Gallen on the other side, 4% projected ownership at 8K. I'm not getting to him either. He obviously looks like less of a priority than Strider, at least for the field, getting about 1/6 of the ownership. This season, Gallen has struck out 22.6% of hitters. That's down 2.5% from last year. Stuff plus grade is down about a point. Pitching plus grade down about a point. Gallen's stuff plus grade never looks good because he is so changeup reliant, which is a pitch that stuff plus is naturally biased against. So he is a really good example of it being important to compare year over year. It's, to try and remove some biases. You don't want to just look and say like, oh, Zach Gallen has never been a good pitcher. He's been lucky his entire career. Like, no, he's really good. His stuff doesn't grade out well in this metric that is biased against it. But this season you have seen a little bit of a drop off in strikeout percentage. The stuff is a little bit worse. And most importantly here, the matchup against the Braves is just a tough one, and you have plenty of pitching on this slate. So for Gallen, I think, at 4% ownership, if you're playing 150 in the $5 and you just end up mixing him in a little bit here and there, I think that's fine. He's low owned. He can certainly still give you a good game, but there's plenty of other pitching that I would rather prioritize. Offensively, I am actually getting to this game a little bit more than I would expect in a game that Zach Gallen is facing Spencer Strider. Starting on the Arizona side, 5% ownership coming into Carroll, 4% or less to the rest of the team. I'm basically 2x on Carroll and Ketel Marte, two left-handed power bats that in Carroll's case especially also give you stolen base upside. So they look good. And then I'm getting like 5% or less of the rest of the team. So a little bit north of the field, but not really prioritizing anything there. I think Carroll and Marte do look the best. You can see relatively high home run projections for both of them in our projections, also a pretty high stolen base projection for Carroll as well. So it makes sense that those guys are showing up. On the Atlanta side against Gallen, still a really cheap price tag here on $4,600 Austin Riley, and he's not getting much ownership. So I am once again just going back to him. That has been happening a lot for me lately, even in difficult matchups. About 5 to 6% projected ownership. I'm getting to about 18% on Riley. That's going to make him one of my higher owned third basemen, I think. Ronald Acuna showing up 10% for me at 6,200, getting about 8 to 9% of Harris and Olsen, 5% Albies, and then less than that of everybody else. For the field, the highest owned guy here is Acuna at 7%, followed by Riley and Ozuna at about 5%. So I am a little bit over the field on Atlanta as well. Like I said, Gallen has struggled a bit this year. So far, righties have a 196 expected ISO against him. Lefties are at 170. Still not a horrible pitcher by any means, striking out 25.5% of righties, only a 319 expected WOBA there. But I do like the expected power numbers allowed. Basically just implies or suggests that he's making enough mistakes against righties. Like his stuff is still good. He's not easy to hit. Guys aren't just going up there and teeing off on him, but he's making mistakes often enough to right-handed hitters that they are able to, do damage against. And so that upside is still there for guys like Riley and Acuna. Rangers are facing Tampa Bay in Tampa. Again, this game right now does have the biggest weather concerns on the slate. Looks like storms late afternoon, hopefully fading out, but we'll see. So have to keep an eye on that one. Don't really have a whole lot else to say at this point. Definitely just watch it. But for Tampa Bay, Drew Rasmussen getting about 7.5% ownership at 7,700. Tyler Mahle getting about 4% at 8,700. His salary remains very expensive for a pitcher that doesn't get a lot of strikeouts because he has been very good at preventing runs so far this season, probably unsustainably so, but only striking out 18.5% of hitters. He does have a good strikeout matchup here against Tampa Bay, but it's just tough to want to pay that salary all that often. Rasmussen on the other side, pretty solid pitcher as well, only striking out 21.6% of hitters this year. Does have a very good stuff plus grade at 111.5. For context, the only pitchers on this slate that have been better in that metric so far this season are Hunter Green and Christopher Sanchez. 108 pitching plus grade, again, is better than most pitchers going today. The only ones better than that are Green, Sanchez, and Skeens. So the stuff has been really, really good for Rasmussen as he works his way back from injury. The matchup here against Texas is a weird one where they haven't been particularly good so far this season. They rank 13th in strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching. They rank 27th in WRC plus, but they have Seager back. They have plenty of guys with pedigree in this lineup that you expect to do well sooner rather than later. So I don't think it's as easy a matchup as their stats to date suggest, but it's not a bad matchup either for Rasmussen. If you want to get to some of him at 7,700, I do think that would be fine. He is somebody that I would expect I start getting to a little bit more, assuming that my 50% Kikuchi gets walked back between now and lock. Turning some of that into more Rasmussen would certainly make sense. Offensively, this is a park that can certainly play well for home runs. Starting on the Texas side, not getting too much of them, which is a nice change of pace because I feel like I jam them in on every slate. Wyatt Langford in about 5% of my lineups. He's getting 3% ownership, 1% of Young and Seager and Josh Smith. So I'm not really getting to Texas here against Rasmussen. Again, just a good pitcher at limiting power, 127 expected ISO to lefties with a 26% K percentage, 110 to righties with a 17% K percentage. Just not a spot that I'm really prioritizing on this slate right now. And then same thing on the Toronto or the Tampa Bay side against Molly. Molly's not a pitcher I love rostering in DFS because the strikeouts aren't really there, but 112 expected ISO to lefties this year, 166 expected ISO to righties. That expected ISO to righties is 100 points higher than his actual ISO allowed. So certainly due for some regression there. Caminero and Diaz showing up like 2% for me, 5% ownership coming into Caminero, 3% to Diaz. Low owned team in this park. If you want to play them, fine, but that's not what I'm getting to. Tigers are facing off against the White Sox in Chicago. Shane Smith pitching for the White Sox. Sawyer, Gibson, Long pitching for the Tigers. I need to pull up Gibson Long's page because, okay, so we have Jackson Jobe in. That's not true. That's not accurate. He is on the injured list, so it's not going to be Jackson Jobe. I'm seeing, Gibson Long listed. So I'm going to pull that up. Data provider issue on the projected lineup right now for the Tigers. Gibson Long is 27 years old, 6'4", 225, 16 innings pitched total in the minors this year, split between A-ball and AAA. Last year, split between AA and AAA. He projects to strike out like 22-ish% of hitters with like a 4 FIP. Mostly out of the bullpen though. So you move that to the rotation and it's going to get a little bit worse. So he's projected for 3% ownership, 6,800. I don't think he's really going to be a factor on this slate. But again, it's not going to be Jackson Jobe. He is on the injured list with, I believe, an elbow injury. So that will be changing at some point between now and lock whenever our data provider fixes their ownership projection or their lineup projection rather. Trying to just find a little bit more info on Gibson Long. He is coming back from the 60-day injured list, but had been pitching in the minors on a rehab start. 53 pitches, 5 1/3 innings pitched in his most recent outing. I don't think he's working deep enough into this game that he's going to matter for DFS. Shane Smith on the other side, tough matchup for him. He's been solid this year. He's certainly somebody that I've played on some slates. 22% strikeout percentage, 95 stuff plus grade, 99.5 pitching plus grade. Everything looks, pretty decent for him. It's not a good matchup against the Tigers. One of the best teams in baseball this year, 5th in WRC plus against right-handed pitching, 6th in strikeout percentage. So they do strike out, but good offense. I'm getting 6 or 7% of Smith. He's getting 3% ownership at 7,500. Just perfect example of the guy where if you're playing a bunch of lineups and he falls into them here and there, it's fine. You don't need to rebuild your lineups or anything, but not any sort of priority. Jake said Nick's part ways with Tibbs. That's shocking to me. Hadn't seen that, but that's also just got, so Bo Brieske is opening for the Tigers. And then I assume that it's going to be Gibson Long following him. So anyway, I don't think we're not playing Tigers pitchers here. And then you're probably not really playing White Sox bats anyway, because they suck no matter who they're facing. And it's not super appealing facing the bullpen game anyway. But yeah, Tibbs being gone is crazy to me. He got you to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think there was a whole lot they could do in that series. I don't know. I thought it was apparently people have been like complaining he didn't play right and Shamit Moore. I thought it was insane he played them at all. But yeah, I don't know how you get rid of him after that, unless it's just like Brunson wanted him gone or something. But that's very surprising to me. Looking at the offenses here, Tigers taking on Smith. Yeah, good point on Malone. Like if you can get Malone, that's fine. Smith, again, not a terrible pitcher, not a great pitcher. Detroit is a very good offense. This park is better for right-handed power than left-handed power. Smith so far this season holding lefties to a 109 expected ISO, righties at 152. You're getting 5 to 10% ownership coming into the Tigers, as you would expect. 13% Parker Meadows for me at 3,700. 10% Kerry Carpenter coming off the 3 home run game at 4,200. I really have no idea what he has to do for his salary to change. He's been in this price range all season long. He has a 298 expected ISO against right-handed pitching this year, 376 expected WOBA. I don't know what Kerry Carpenter has to do to get priced up to like 4,800. Riley Green showing up 7% for me at 4,500. Torkelson showing up 5% at 4,300. So I'm pretty much in line with the field in that like 5 to 10% range on most of the good Tigers. I am a little bit north of the field on Meadows and Carpenter. I think they are just underpriced relative to everybody else. Meadows gives you stolen base upside as well. Yeah, good point on Jenkins too. For the White Sox, again, not a super appealing matchup here. I'm getting to them a lot in the lineups I built. I think that completely goes away. It's a function of not that projecting them against Jackson Jobe is any better than projecting them against Brieske / Gibson Long. But I think this is just a function of not having by having Jobe projected in for the Tigers, we don't have the right projections on the White Sox either, because our projections are based off of our in-house sim. So it simulated thousands of games with them facing Jobe, which is not going to be the case. You do have the bullpen game here with Brieske opening, and then just no ownership coming in here either. I think I end up not getting to nearly as much White Sox as I am right now. If you are going to the White Sox for value, like Benintendi is underpriced. So is Vargas. He's actually been productive this year in terms of expected power numbers, as has Benintendi. I mentioned that yesterday. Really surprising from Benintendi in particular. Against right-handed pitching, 114 plate appearances this year, 253 expected ISO, Vargas at 203. Those are the guys I'm getting the most of right now. Getting into some $2,600 Sosa, $2,800 Caro, $3K Talkman. So, again, I don't think I get nearly as much of the White Sox as I'm getting right now, but they are a reasonable value team. Even if you're just going like mini stacks, maybe trying to get up to like the Yankees or, a relatively expensive offense, and then mix in the White Sox that are underpriced, even though they're not good. So I do think that changes for me a bit, but I do want to point out the value component there, especially because they're all projected for like 3% ownership or less. Kansas City facing St. Louis in St. Louis, so not a good park for hitting home runs. For the Royals, we have Michael Lorenzen. For the Cardinals, we have Andre Payante. Payante, very, very, very good ground ball pitcher. Not a great strikeout pitcher, which means not a great DFS pitcher. Also, brutal strikeout matchup going up against Kansas City. 2% projected ownership to both of these guys. I'm not getting to either one. Tough strikeout matchups. Neither one is a good strikeout pitcher / DFS pitcher. Kansas City is 29th in K percentage against right-handed pitching this year. St. Louis is 28th. Lorenzen has struck out 19.1% of hitters. Payante has struck out 15.9%. I don't need to get to either of the pitchers. I am getting to a lot of offenses in this one, which is somewhat surprising given the park and maybe does come down a little bit. But at the same time, if I'm getting to 30% Bobby Witt, I'm certainly not going to be too mad about it. He's getting 13% ownership. He's only 5,500. Jonathan India, Salvador Perez, Vinny Pasquantino, all getting 5 to 10% ownership, and I'm basically double that. And then drops off a bit to where I'm just mixing in some Waters, Garcia. Caglione is up. He is 3,500, massive power upside for him. So that's something to keep an eye on. I don't have much of him now, but if I'm stacking Kansas City, I would think that I would want a bit more of Caglione, given just the massive ceiling that he has at a cheap price tag. He is first base and outfield eligible as well, so it's not like you have to choose between him and Pasquantino. So that's one thing that I would like to change between now and lock. Like, if I am going to play Kansas City, certainly give me some $3,500 Caglione in addition to Witt, India, Perez, Pasquantino. So I am getting to them right now, but again, it's not with a ton of confidence. Like, it's not a spot that I love. It's not a good park for hitting home runs. It's not a pitcher that gives up a lot of power. Piante, very, very good at keeping the ball on the ground, like a 60+% ground ball percentage so far this season. So I do like the pricing on Kansas City, though. 5,500 for Witt is cheap for his ability. And then the rest of the team is pretty much free. India's 3K, Perez is 3,200, Pasquantino's 3,200, Caglioni's 3,500, Waters is 3K, Garcia is day to day at 4,500. He's the only other relatively expensive player in this lineup other than Witt. So I think that is what's driving a lot of Kansas City for me right now. It's just the combination of them being a value stack and then also having some power / stolen base upside in their lineup. It's probably that my Kansas City teams look really good, like outside of the Kansas City part. If I pull up their 5-mans just to see kind of what those look like, I'm going to flip over to the SaberSim page to show it, but assuming I can do that quickly. There we go. So like looking at 5-man Kansas City stacks, I would expect these lineups to be pretty loaded just because of the pricing. And like you can see it here, you get the Hunter Green. So it's like you have the 5 Kansas City guys, they're whatever. Obviously, Bobby Witt's great. And then these guys are just cheap and have, some semblance of upside. But you're getting the Hunter Green, you're getting the Cal Raleigh, you're getting the Jose Ramirez, you're getting the Juan Soto. So you have like the best one-offs that you can really get to. Another Hunter Green lineup with Ramirez, Soderstrom, Soto, Green, Tatis, Rooker, Butler. So like that's why Kansas City is showing up. It's not really about Kansas City. It's the same reason the White Sox are showing up for me. It's that the rest of the lineup is just such a high upside lineup. You're getting, at least one really good pitcher, and then you can either get a really good SP2, like if you wanted, you could go Green, Rodon, or as seems to be the case for me more often, I'm going Green plus a value pitcher, or Rodon or whatever plus a value pitcher, but then I'm just getting to the best hitters outside of as 2-mans or one-offs, whatever it may be. So that's, I think, what's driving up Kansas City. It's not, and that's something I always keep in mind whenever somebody's talking about their player exposures, or if you're somebody that is going back and looking at different, how different people played a slate. It's not always a function of like, I played a lot of Kansas City because I think Kansas City is going to do well. I played a lot of Kansas City because if Kansas City does well, I have ridiculously high ceiling lineups everywhere because of what I can pair with them. And then similarly, what will happen a lot is you'll get a relatively expensive team like the Yankees. Obviously, the Yankees can score a bunch of runs, but the problem you run into is even if you play them and they score a bunch of runs, then you're still counting on like your $3,200 one-offs to do stuff, which is obviously less appealing than counting on like Juan Soto and Jose Ramirez. So just looking at, the rest of these lineups, Nootbaar, Acuna, Ramirez, one-offs is why I think I'm getting to so much Kansas City. It's just the upside of the lineup as a whole is very, very high. So now getting back to the Run the Sims page, get that on the screen. There we go. On the Cardinal side, not getting to them really offensively. I have a little bit of Nootbaar, I have a little bit of Wynn, but Kansas City is the priority for me right now just because of how cheap they are and what you can fit around them. Also working for Kansas City is the positions, like Jonathan India, 3K at second base, Perez, 3,200 at catcher, Witt, 5,500 at shortstop. Obviously, shortstop, you have very, very high ceiling guys at the top with, Witt and Henderson and De La Cruz, et cetera, Lindor. But when you talk like value at shortstop, it's usually pretty hard to find much upside. So you're covering in those Kansas City stacks, you're covering a lot of the relatively weak positions, and then it's letting you just grab like first baseman, outfielders, the positions that you really want to be getting one-offs at, because that's where the best overall hitters are. So that's another thing that shows up for Kansas City. And another thing, actually, I think that shows up for the White Sox a bit, because you have Vargas, you have Caro as part of stacks. So I think that's what's kind of driving me getting to those teams is the stack as a whole. Or the lineup rather as a whole, more so than the stack actually being in a good spot. Baltimore taking on Seattle in one of the worst places to try and score runs in baseball. George Kirby going for the Mariners, Sagano going for the Orioles, and I've messed up everything I had up on the SaberSim screen by showing those Kansas City stacks. So I'm trying to get that set back up. Actually, so I need to go back to St. Louis. Okay, yeah, I'm still not getting much St. Louis, but I had the wrong thing checked before. All right, so Baltimore, Seattle. In Seattle, George Kirby, Tomo Sagano. Kirby showing up 25% of the time for me, 17% for the field. He's only 8,200 in Seattle, so that looks good. Obviously, we still don't really know what to expect from him. He's only made a couple of starts since coming back from the injured list. He has not been particularly good in those starts. He faced Houston, 3 2/3, 5 earned runs, 5 innings against the Nats, gave up 6 earned runs. He has scored a combined 2.8 fantasy points through his first 2 starts, 72 pitches in the first start, 78 in the second start, and again, didn't pitch effectively in either of those. So he's far from safe here, but he is a pitcher with a long track record of being good. The matchup against the Orioles is not ideal. Like, they are an offense that has good left-handed hitters that can do a lot of damage. They are also a banged-up offense. They do get Colton Cowser back from the injured list today, but still missing Tyler O'Neill, missing Ryan Mountcastle, who's been garbage this year anyway, but for his career, not a bad hitter. Missing Ramon Laureano, who's been good this year, missing Jordan Westberg. So the bottom of this order is still just strikeout heaven for a pitcher. When you have Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad, and probably Jorge Mateo, no Cedric Mullins in this lineup. He's on the injured list. So if he can just kind of navigate his way through the Holiday, Rutschman, Henderson, O'Hearn, Urias, Cowser part, which, easier said than done. Those are a lot of good hitters, but the park should certainly help with that as well. You do just kind of get the ability to rack up strikeouts at the bottom of this order with Mayo, Kjerstad, Mateo probably being in there, or at least guys that are like the equivalent of that. So at 8,200 in this park, it's scary getting to Kirby since we haven't seen a good start yet this year, but I am okay with it. He's showing up around 25% for me, like I said, 15 to 20% for the field. Kirby, so in his, he hasn't thrown enough innings yet for him to show up on my leaderboards page. So definitely risky, but good park. And the Orioles do have right now a sub-4 team total, so that's something to pay attention to as well, just to kind of reinforce general sentiment on how a spot looks. Like, if you were to see the Orioles in the spot with like a 4.5 total in Seattle, that's one of those things that would jump out as like a reason to be like, oh shit, like Kirby might just kind of be cooked right now. But you're seeing like a normal total for the Orioles here in this park. Sagano getting 3% ownership. I'm not getting to him. I don't really see any real need to. $6,500 price tag, solid Seattle offense. The park is obviously good for pitching. And if I walk back some Kikuchi and have to stay in that price range, maybe I get to some 6,500 Sagano, but certainly wouldn't be a priority for me. He's a potentially better real life pitcher than DFS pitcher. I'm still not convinced he's a good real life pitcher either, but 100.6 pitching plus grade is basically league average, only striking out 13.7% of hitters, 92 stuff plus grade, does rely on a splitter, which is something that stuff plus is typically biased against, but not getting there. On the Orioles side, I am a little bit north of the field. They are basically projected for like 2% ownership across the board. Henderson leads the way at 4%. He's the exception. I'm getting like 5% of most of the good hitters here. Gunnar, Holiday, Rutschman, Urias, showing up like 5 to 7% of the time. So a little bit above the field. And again, there is a lot of volatility here, just given that Kirby has struggled so far. But the park limits some of that. It's just so hard to hit home runs in this park. If this game were in Baltimore, I think would be a lot more interesting. On the Seattle side against Sugano, not getting to too much of them either. Neither is the field. 5% or less to everybody on Seattle. Outside of Cal Raleigh, who's coming in at 5%. I'm getting the 5%. He's been one of the best hitters in baseball this year. I believe third or fourth in WRC plus amongst qualified hitters so far, which is just insane for a catcher. The top 5 are Judge. I think it's Judge, Soto, Ohtani, Raleigh, and O'Hearn, not in that order. I know O'Hearn's in the top 5. I know Raleigh's in the top 5. I know Judge and Ohtani are. I don't remember the 5th. I think it's Soto. But, just crazy for both O'Hearn and for Raleigh to be in the top 5 there. But also 5,500 for Cal Raleigh in Seattle. It's not that he hasn't earned it. He absolutely has, hit 2 home runs in this park the other day to win me the tournament on Friday. So he can certainly do it in this park, but clearly not going to be a huge priority. Sagano so far this season has allowed a 190 expected ISO to lefties, 223 to righties. So he has given up some power to both sides of the plate. He is somebody that I would expect to be slightly reverse splits just because of his reliance on that splitter, much more so to lefties. He throws it 34% of the time to lefties. He's only thrown it 14% to righties. Strikeout percentage against lefties is 15% compared to 12%. So not a drastic difference, but I do think that righties probably look a little bit better against him. But overall, anybody looks fine. It's mostly just the park keeping things in check. Again, if this game were in Baltimore, I would really like both sides of it and would absolutely love the Seattle side. San Diego taking on the Giants in San Francisco, another park that is not good for offense. Pitching, we have Landon Rupp and Ryan Bergert, sub 5% ownership coming into both of them. I'm not getting to either one. Very, very tough strikeout matchup for Landon Rupp. Obviously, Webb made that look like a myth yesterday, but San Diego is a very, very tough team to strike out. They rank 27th in K percentage against right-handed pitching so far this season. Landon Rupp has struck out 22.6% of hitters. That's up 5% from last year. 99.3 stuff plus grade, 106.5 pitching plus grade. Everything looked good for Landon Rupp. So I think he's, kind of in that same bucket of like Drew Rasmussen, where if you're playing a bunch of lineups and you're getting to some of him, it's okay, but it's not somebody I'm really targeting. I don't like the matchup against the Padres. I do like the park a lot. But if I start losing Kikuchi, or if you're somebody that just doesn't want to play Kikuchi for perfectly valid reasons, then you probably do start considering more of like this mid 7Ks range with Landon Rupp, with Drew Rasmussen, with guys like that are perfectly fine, especially again in San Francisco. But the strikeout matchup is just a tough one. Not getting to Bergert on the other side at 5,500. Offensively, not getting to really anything in this game either. It's just not a good run scoring environment. If you were to take shots at this game, I think you're just looking at like Tatis, Machado, Merrill probably on the San Diego side, and then like Chapman, Flores, Yastrzemski, Adames on the San Francisco side. But right now, my highest owned hitter from this game would be Matt Chapman at 2%. You can see nobody in this game has a home run projection above Chapman's 0.17. If you look at the slate overall, you can see how low that is. Like all of these hitters have a home run projection higher than anybody in the entire game in San Francisco. So speaks to why that is not showing up for me. Twins are taking on the A's in Sacramento. High scoring game last night, looking like we'll probably get another one here. Jorge Lopez going for Minnesota. Jorge Lopez going for neither team. Pablo Lopez going for Minnesota. Jacob Lopez going for the A's. $9,300 salary on Pablo. $6K salary on Jacob. Pablo, obviously the one that you're going to want to get to if you go to one of them here. Reminder, this park is a minor league stadium. It is going to be very prone to wind direction, and the wind is blowing out again. That is what's generally going to happen in Sacramento. Is night games, the wind is going to blow out. Day games, it's going to blow in, I believe. And then Tampa Bay is the opposite. So I think 19% projected ownership to Pablo. I'm getting 18%. There is some strikeout upside on the A's once you just kind of get around Jacob Wilson, who is impossible to strike out. So their active roster ranks 16th in strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year, but they are also 7th in WRC plus. It's a good offense overall. It's a really scary spot for Pablo with the wind blowing out, with warm weather, but he is obviously also still talented. So getting 15 to 20% of him right along with the field, I think is fine. 25% strikeout percentage this year, pretty much in line with what he did last year. Not getting to whoever's pitching for the A's, whether it's Jacob Lopez or if they go to Osvaldo Vito, doesn't really matter. I'm seeing Vito listed now too as well. It isn't going to matter. Whichever guy is pitching for the A's, doesn't matter. Not going to either of them here. Minnesota offensively going to look good again. They're getting a lot of ownership. I'm not getting to a ton of them right now, probably just because of how much ownership they're getting. There's 23 other offenses. Like they have like almost 6 implied run total here. They offer some value. Buxton's expensive at 5,700. Everybody else is sub 4K. There's no shortage of upside, good point per dollar value, etc. But especially, the tournament that I was building for when I built lineups for this show there is the $5 53,000 entry tournament. Like every offense that we've talked about on this slate, even the good ones, have across the board been projected for like 5 to 10% ownership or lower. And then here with Minnesota, 20% ownership to Buxton, 20% to Jeffers, 15% to Lewis, 15% to Correa, 15% to Castro, 12% to Bader. It just becomes so difficult to differentiate from a 53,000 entry field if every hitter in your stack is 10 to 20% owned. And then, assuming you're going to want to get to the good pitching that you can get to, because that ends up being like another issue is you can say, well, I'll play low owned pitchers. And it's like, okay, well, everybody else playing these Minnesota stacks is also going to have like Carlos Rodon or Hunter Green or whatever. And you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to play bad pitching to be different. Like, okay, but you're just still playing at a huge disadvantage there. Whereas you're at less of a disadvantage if you just play offenses that are a little bit worse in point per dollar projection, but give you the same range of outcomes. So I think that's why I'm not getting the Minnesota. They're a team that I assume would be very heavily used in cash lineups. If you're playing cash, they are clearly some of the best point per dollar projections on the slate. But at least right now, the ownership just getting, 2 to 4 times the ownership of other spots is off-putting. And I think, again, like that's kind of what you're seeing with me getting to Kansas City, with me getting to the White Sox, which again, I don't actually want the White Sox. I don't love KC, but I'm at least those teams are going to give me very similar lineup construction to Minnesota. And then I'm just in a spot where, okay, I'm getting, 4 or 5 to 1 odds that the Royals score more runs today than the Twins, or that the White Sox score more runs than the Twins. In that case, I'm getting like 5 to 10 to 1. But with these Minnesota teams, the reason they're going to be so popular is they project so well, because not only are you getting the good point per dollar projections on Minnesota, but then you're doing the same thing where you can play Soto, you can play Alonso, you can play Judge, you can play whatever hitters around them, you can play whatever pitching around them. And so if you're just using optimizers, or if you're using sim tools that don't do a good job of capturing variance and are going to just tell you that the highest projected lineups are the best lineups way more often than they really are, and those tools absolutely exist, you're just going to get so much of this particular team and this particular build that probably I'm going to end up just going other routes and hoping that the Twins don't score 10 runs or something. But again, it has nothing to do with the quality of play here. Like, they're obviously very, very good ownership and GPP size aside, and in smaller field stuff, like that's fine. You'll see the ownership come up in smaller field stuff, but you obviously just have less teams that you need to beat. Lower stakes stuff, like, the mini max, I assume I haven't been able to play it in a couple of years, but like I assume you're going to get lower ownership on the Twins there than you will even in the $5, certainly than you would in like the $100. The $100, 150K to first today. So like there, maybe you play them a little bit more. But yeah, the ownership is the only real concern here. And not just the ownership, just the combinatorial effect of not only is Buxton 20% and Correa is 15%, et cetera, of the Byron Buxton lineups, like, 50% have Correa, 50% have Larnach, whatever it may be. So you run into that issue as well. It just becomes so difficult to separate yourself from the, 10,000 people that are playing some combination of Minnesota today. On the other side for the A's, good hitting conditions there against a relatively popular pitcher. Jake DeWitt said Minnesota pinch hit risk. Depends who's pitching in part, but they are a team that platoons. Generally, I am more concerned about them when a lefty starts and they have like Wallner / Larnach coming off the bench, because those guys are going to get in. But yeah, if they start Beto, those guys are going to start. The A's do have, I'm not sure the A's have a lefty available today out of the bullpen. Sean Newcomb threw 26 pitches yesterday. Hogan Harris threw 30. Both of those numbers are kind of like right on that line of when teams don't really want to use them 2 days in a row. So I'm not confident saying they absolutely won't. I would be if they had thrown like 50. But the A's do not have a left-handed reliever that did not throw at least 26 pitches yesterday. So they do have that, which would lower pinch hit risk a little bit if you're getting like Beto starting and then Larnach, Wallner, those guys in the starting lineup for Minnesota. On the A side, I'm not getting to them much, but I would like to if I can. They are like I like the spot in tournaments. Good park for home runs. Lopez is a good pitcher, but he's going to have ownership as well. So far this season, only a 146 expected ISO to lefties, 131 to righties. So again, good pitcher, but you have a lot of power upside here on the A's. As I mentioned, top 10 offense against right-handed pitching so far this season. Butler's only 4,200, Rooker's 4,400, Soderstrom's 4,100, Langolier's 4,200. Power hitting catcher, that's $1,300 less than Raleigh in a park that's better for hitting home runs. So I would like by lock to, I would throw the A's on the list with like the Red Sox and the Angels of teams that, as I'm going through the slate for the first time right now, just talking through it. Not that I really ever manually manipulate things to, my exposures or anything. I spent enough time working on creating a process that gives me what I think are good lineups consistently enough that I don't generally go in and change stuff. But like, if I run my stuff at lock, the three teams that I've seen so far where I'm like, yeah, I would want more than I have right now: Angels, Red Sox, A's. I really like the upside for the A's here, even though the median is relatively low. I think they're a team too that, they're a little more expensive than Minnesota, but I think you can get pretty similar roster construction where you have, a good SP1, you have good one-offs around them, and obviously a very high ceiling. And then wrapping things up with Minnesota and the Dodgers in LA. So another good park for hitting home runs. Minnesota did also, I just wanted to double back to this. Minnesota used their bullpen, used 4 guys out of their bullpen yesterday. Nobody threw more than 17 pitches. I assume they're all available today, but marginally better for the A's than if, Minnesota hadn't used their bullpen yesterday, I guess. But nothing that stands out there. The interesting stuff out of the bullpen was the 2 lefties for the A's. So wrapping this one up in Dodger Stadium with the Mets and Dodgers. Tyler McGill going for the Mets. Clayton Kershaw, or at least his corpse, going for the Dodgers. $8,300 price tag on McGill. $6,900 on Kershaw. Kershaw not getting any ownership, and I'm not getting to him. He has thrown about 12 innings, 11 innings this year, through 30 last year. 18% strikeout percentage in his 30 innings last year, 12.8% so far this year. Maybe, hopefully, he turns it around. It always sucks when you get to the end of these guys' careers. We saw it with Wainwright. We thought we were seeing it with Morton, but it seems like he's kind of figured it out. Sucks when it gets to the end of these careers, like guys that debuted when I was in high school, and now it's just like, man, like just a semblance of themselves. Kershaw, obviously injury related, but there's no reason to think it's necessarily turning around tonight against the Mets in Dodger Stadium. McGill on the other side is good. $8,300 price tag. You do have some workload concerns on him, generally a pretty short leash, but he has certainly been good. 30.4% strikeout percentage, is only trailing Carlos Rodon and Hunter Green on this slate. 109 stuff plus grade, 107.6 pitching plus score. Everything looks really good for McGill, except for the fact that he has to face the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium. Just an absurdly good offense. They have the highest WRC plus in baseball. They don't strike out a lot. They rank 19th in K percentage against right-handed pitching. I'm getting 2 or 3% McGill. So is the field. From a talent standpoint, like if you just completely ignore matchup and you go down the list of pitchers and look at their prices, Tyler McGill jumps off the page as far as this guy has no business being $8,300 from a talent standpoint / strikeout standpoint. But then you throw in the matchup, which obviously matters. And it's just like, yeah, okay, well, I understand why he's $8,300. So not getting to much of the pitching here, but if I were to go to one, I would go to McGill first. I am getting to the Mets offense. Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, both showing up 20% of the time. Getting to Nimmo, Alvarez, Taylor, Lindor, whatever Ronnie Mauricio is, like 10 to 15% of the time. And again, it's just the park is really good for home runs, good for offense, and Kershaw hasn't had it. Obviously a very limited sample last year. If you go back to this year rather, if you go back to last year, still a small sample, but only a 149 expected ISO to righties, 368 expected WOBA, 15% strikeout percentage. So Strikeouts haven't been there, but he has at least done a good job of limiting expected power. This season, though, 232 expected ISO through those first couple of starts to righties. It's really just looking to capitalize on volatility. We have no idea what Clayton Kershaw is going to look like tonight. At some point, he probably at least pitches better than he has through his first two starts, even if he gets nowhere close to what he used to be. You have no idea what he's going to look like tonight. And if he doesn't have his stuff, this is just such a prime spot for the Mets to throw up a ton of runs in this park with the caliber of hitters that they have in their lineup. And then also, excluding Alonso, Soto, Lindor, who are 5K plus, it's a very cheap team as well. Nimmo's cheap, Taylor's cheap, Alvarez is cheap, Marte is cheap. So that also, is working in the Mets' favor when you think about it in terms of like ceiling per dollar, basically. And then on the other side for the Dodgers, not getting as much of them as I was the Mets. I am getting to 19% Ohtani. He's getting 17% ownership. So pretty much in line with the field on him. Clearly, doesn't matter who he's facing. You're happy to get to him. McGill this year, 124 expected ISO to lefties, 123 to righties, striking lefties out 25% of the time, striking righties out 35.5% of the time. Mookie Betts is expected back tonight for the Dodgers. That is another downgrade for Tyler McGill, just in terms of getting strikeouts and facing really good hitters, all of that. But Ohtani showing up as the priority for me from the Dodgers, getting to 7% Muncy, not getting to much of the rest of it. Looking at chat, I'm not sure what other Dodgers injuries have to do with Kershaw pitching well, but I doubt he's going to pitch well too. It just doesn't have anything to do with Tyler Glasnow being hurt. To recap everything, starting at pitcher, and again, take my player exposures right now with a grain of salt. They absolutely will change between now and lock. But can pull it up on the screen here as well. Rodon, Green, Lopez, Kirby, our highest projected pitchers. Strider, I think, is higher projected. Strider's like up in this range for a lot of the industry. We just have him a little bit lower based on what we've seen so far. For me, in terms of exposure, Rodon, Green, Kikuchi, Kirby at the top. And again, Kikuchi scares the shit out of me. I hope a good amount of that goes away. At catcher, in terms of projection, Raleigh, Contreras, Jeffers, Will Smith at the top. In terms of exposure for me right now, Perez, Caro, and Alvarez at the top. At first base, Ohtani, Alonso, Pasquantino, and Harper, my highest owned first baseman. Highest projected are the same ones except for Olsen over Pasquantino. So getting to Pasquantino for some value. At second base, Marte, Stott, Turang, India, the highest projected. The ones I'm getting to the most, India, Sosa, Turang, Marte. At third base, getting to Austin Riley, Miguel Vargas, Jose Ramirez, most often Riley, Ramirez, Devers, the highest projected third baseman. Shortstop, Witt, De La Cruz, Lindor are the highest projected. My highest owned right now are Witt, Lindor, De La Cruz, and Ronnie Mauricio if he's in the lineup for the Mets. He is 2K flat. And then in the outfield, Benintendi at 2,900 showing up a lot for me. Soto, Schwarber, Meadows, Nimmo, Carpenter, Acuna. So other than Benintendi, getting to outfielders that I really like. In terms of projection, Ohtani, Acuna, Soto, Buxton, Judge, your top projected there. Top stacks for me right now overall, Kansas City, White Sox, Mets, Angels, Tigers. 5-mans are the Mets, the Royals, the White Sox, the Braves, and the Phillies. Again, I think the White Sox probably come down at least a little bit. But they are a good value stack at the very least. You can build really high upside teams around them and then just pray that the White Sox actually do well, which they probably won't. But that wraps this one up. Thank you for checking out the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up button, turn on notifications, all of that stuff. You can get access to the Run the Sims projections using the link in the description below and use the promo code that you see on your screen, UTA MLB, to get you 10% off. Good luck on your lineups tonight.